Well, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I am thrilled to have Jess Carlin here today to present to you. I am not going to take much time. Just going to turn it over to you, Jess.
All right, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. Um, Used to doing this live, because I was a high school English and theater teacher for 15 years. So feel free to raise hands, interact, throw information in the chat. A lot of this presentation is supposed to be like an anecdotal dialogue of things I've observed in my years in K-12 education and how I've noticed that some of the policies and trends and things that have occurred, they create those habits, right? A lot of high school is meant to build the habits to make you successful for high school and beyond. Even if they're not learning how to do their taxes, they're learning how to have deadlines. And so those habits are following. And from a college perspective, not many people have that view other than from when they were in high school themselves. So seeing what has been going on in those K-12 classrooms could give an insight as to why our students do what they do. And granted, the things we're going to talk about have been happening for years. They're just becoming more commonplace, and we're seeing why. So um, I am going to tell you within this piece a little bit about myself, maybe do some icebreakers. Hopefully, they're not too painful. And then we'll talk about these lessons that I've learned in the classroom and we'll have discussions about possible outcomes and solutions. And then just any of your own like experiences, if you've noticed any of these connections, kind of helps. Okay. So a little bit about myself. Like I said, my name is Jess Carlin. I'm a first generation college student. So a lot of the things that I learned prior to college was just through trial and error because I went in blind. My dad was a postal worker, my mom was a secretary. So we just kind of rolled with it. But I did graduate from Wayne State in 2009 with my BA in secondary education. And I went to Madonna University for my master's as a literacy specialist. I noticed in the K-12 setting that most literacy supports and practices stopped at fifth grade, and I wanted to fix that because I had secondary students that were coming to me who couldn't read, who couldn't do deep comprehension, but they could do some other things. So how can we create a system that supports the secondary education? That's what my master's project was. I taught in 4 different school districts in 15 years in my teaching career prior to coming to Wayne State. And in the various side hustles that I worked, I was also working with, youth community theaters. So I've seen a lot in my time. Um, and just as like a little bit of icebreaker to kind of get us thinking about our students, start thinking about yourself as a student. Now you can put this in the chat, you can raise hands, unmute, talk about it, but I want you to think about how would you describe yourself as a student, either at the high school level, college level, a little bit of both. What kind of college student were you? I know myself in high school, and let me just throw some old school pictures. I got high school me with like the chopped hair from when everyone really liked Claire Danes and the Mod Squad situation. And then when I did my student teaching at John Glenn High School in Westland, I looked like a student. It's fine. But when I think about my high school self, I was an avoidant personality to start with, at least in my first year or so in high school. Um, I struggled with an undiagnosed ADHD situation throughout most of high school and college. So I had to figure out how my brain worked on my own in a little bit of a different way. So when I was in high school, I kind of like let things go, didn't turn in things right away. But then after being excessively grounded, I started turning it around because I wanted my parents off my case. And then when I started turning in work and doing well, I was like, oh, actually, this isn't so bad. And those skills kind of followed me to college where I was like I wouldn't call myself type A, but type A personality with B chill so that I could get stuff going. But in college, I was very much a figure it out myself person. So I didn't know what resources were there. So yeah, tell me about yourselves. What kind of students? I see some people talking about anxious and confused, but happy to be there most of the time. Some people were disciplined and involved. I was a marching band kid. You already know the type. Any others? Maya.
Yep. So I was focused, but not on the right stuff, right? Like I was not doing well in school, but focused on leadership and things happening outside of the classroom.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we see that frequently with our students, right? They have focus, they have drive, they have intensity, but sometimes it's not geared in what seems like beneficial ways. Um, so how do we take that and channel it in a way that's going to help them be overall successful, you know? Gifted. Thanks, John. Yeah. A lot of people saying that, first gen self-starter, figuring things out on their own. Yes, Kate, eldest daughter syndrome. I was the baby. I had an older brother that did go to college before me, but they didn't have to worry about them. I'm the reason my parents have gray hair. Like, I don't seem like a problem child. I am a problem child, and I know that. Emily did work, college, unhappy with the major. Yeah. And when we see our students start to realize they tell themselves they have a specific goal because they've been told this is where they want to go or this is what they don't want to go. And then they get into the thick of it and they're like, I hate this. So, how do you find something that brings you joy as well? Um, yeah, a lot of high achieving, college first gen, so many people coming in with imposter syndrome. Thank you for sharing all of these, by the way. But yeah, if you can even looking in the chat, you see so many varied experiences. And our students are coming in with these same things. So looking at who we are, how often do you guys see yourself in some of your students? It helps us to make those connections. Um, See, Stephanie, I was the kid everyone let theirs hang out with when they were grounded. Nice. Yeah, we got free-spirited, didn't take grades as serious, but college was very disciplined. Yeah, because college felt like a completely different situation from high school. You get the freedom, and some people take that freedom and run, and some people drown in that freedom. So, thank you guys for sharing. So keeping in mind like who we were as students and kind of how we see, yeah, college was so much better than high school for me too, right? I'm like, I was just like, I just need to get out of this place. I need to get out of this place. And I went to Wayne because none of my friends were going. I just needed a fresh start away from people, you know, because uh random background too. I went from one famous last name to another. So Carlin is my current name. Brady was my maiden name. So like having that follow you everywhere, it's just like you need to get away. So I have a couple presentation goals. Our first main goal is to have a more clear understanding of the habits and expectations that our K-12 students went through and that reinforced some interesting habits that are following them into college. A second goal is just it's conversation. How do we get conversations going so we can shift advising approaches with the new understanding of these habits? Now, these habits might be things that are like, oh yeah, I see this all the time. Or, oh yeah, when I was in high school back in times we won't even discuss, like, yeah, those were things that occurred as well, but why are they happening more frequently? Okay, so as I'd mentioned before, it's all about anecdotal conversation. I was an English major within everything, and a lot of anyone that has studied literature in any way, shape, or form, pattern recognition is big when it comes to like writing and reading. And a lot of education is pattern recognition. What are the patterns you notice, and how are those either beneficial or harmful, and what can we do to fix it? So that's kind of where we're going with this. And again, these are based on my personal experience in my career in education. So please, please, please ask questions, make connections, share your own experiences, because we all know that when we have conversations, that's when ideas spark. So now that we thought about ourselves as students, let's think about our own students, right? Think about the students you support. I have been heavily in the world of theater and dance advising. So, and it helps because I was actually a dance minor here as a student. So I have an idea of how the dancers work in the theater. So how would you describe the typical student in your department? Is there such thing as a typical student in your department? And what about the extremes? Because in education, people will either teach to the middle or the extremes, and someone gets lost in the sauce. So how do we not have that happen? So hands, you can put things in the chat, whatever works. I can also talk about my typical student. Yeah. Emily's putting, I don't think there's a typical student, but there's a lot of commonalities. I agree. Of working, care and taking, other responsibilities outside. There's definitely worries about our burnout from our super high achievers. Totally agree, because they have a hard time compartmentalizing and like everything has to be perfect and an A. And how do we redefine perfect? Like, is that a thing? I know the dance students, they're usually like crazy on top of everything. And I think that comes from being in dance for so long because they know like the competition seasons, they know what they need to do. They have the expectations. They're on top of it so they don't fall into the cracks. Whereas my theater students, they focus on the art. I mean, they both focus on the art, but sometimes the art drowns out the other. And so we get both. And then we know people in the arts tend to be neurospicy. And so object permanence is a thing. So my theater students, part of the reason I sit in my office so frequently is because when they put eyes on me, they go, oh yeah, I forgot I had to talk to Jess about something. And it reminds them and they do the thing. Let's see, looking through some of these. Thank you so much for interacting. I really appreciate. And like I said, if anyone wants to raise a hand or just unmute and talk, I'm cool with it, whatever works. Otherwise, I can read stuff off. We don't have typical students, but you have to put a hat on that matches their energy. Absolutely. Pre-nursing students are very focused on being a nurse, and sometimes that is an issue if not doing well in the science classes. Yeah, but the science is essential. We worry about students that we can't reach and wonder why they don't reach out, even if they know they need help. Yes, that's big. That's big. How do we break that? Can we, you know? I have more students with additional external responsibilities, especially where we're located. A lot of our students are coming in. They have to have jobs to work to support, whether it's they're supporting family, they're supporting themselves, paying for school. We have so many other outside external factors, and we don't know what everyone's carrying when they come in. And then, you know, with the way things are today, we won't even go into that one, but we know they're carrying a lot. Students saying I'm behind or off track, absolutely. We know that they're focusing on, we do tend to focus on either high achieving or struggling, and then the middle do get lost. Yeah. Oh, Helen, yeah, foreclose when a student is determined to go into a career won't change from that focus. Yeah. So a lot of thinking about our students and having these terms is like getting us to really truly understand what's coming through when they come into us. And we also have a lot of adult learners that, you know, maybe they didn't have these lessons, but like we still want to make sure that we're thinking about them as well. So looking at all of these bits and pieces, we want to think about like, why are things occurring the way they're occurring? And from my experiences in the schools, I notice that there are certain constant, consistent scenarios that even in every school I've been in and all of my peers that work in various schools, they can say similar things, you know, and they're like little mini lessons that I've learned through them. I kind of just grouped into 4 as of now. There's so many more, but I figured these were like the most pressing ones in the moment that also led to some of the more interesting and complex reactions. So what we're going to do is go through those 4 different scenarios. We're going to read the lessons, and maybe come up with possible supports and solutions for each lesson. So how would you help a student navigate college or unlearn that lesson? So that's going to be the goal. We're going to look at the lessons, talk about what it possibly implies, and then any additional feedback or how we can support a student in this scenario could help. Does that make sense? Cool. Okay. Continuing on. So the first major lesson that this actually drove me absolutely bonkers when my colleagues would say this. And just a little more context, my last 7 years of teaching in high school, I taught mostly juniors and seniors. So I was prepping them for those exams. I was prepping them for college. I was helping them find those scholarships, find things that felt right for them, reminding them that college doesn't have to be the only path because there are so many other options. It's all about what brings you joy, what drives you, and what can sustain you in life. And um, there were many of my colleagues that were perpetuating these weird vibes of they won't put up with that in college. Now, granted, these are people that they're telling teenagers about what college is like when they haven't stepped foot on a college campus in 20 plus years. So is that really what college is like? So many instructors utilize the fear of unknown and authority to shock students into complying with behaviors. Oh, you can't turn in things late in college. They're not going to put up with that. Oh, you can't just do X, Y, and Z in college. They won't put up with that. But then when students come to college, here's what actually ends up happening. They now have gained a fear of asking for help because it puts the instructors on a pedestal as if they're untouchable, as if they're not human. I was actually having a conversation with one of the faculty members the other day, and they're like, yeah, it's weird because they'll either ask me a million questions or ask me nothing, and there's nothing in between. So the students that have internalized this lesson don't ask for help as frequently because they don't feel like they can. They felt like, oh, my high school teachers were okay with that, but my college teachers won't be. They have a fear of making mistakes and this assumption that college is super strict and unbending. It's just you have to figure it out on your own. And while, yes, they do need to figure out some things on their own, they have a whole bevy of resources to support them as they do it. They just don't know. It was easily found and in front of them in high school, and in college, you got to hunt a little sometimes. That's where advisors come into play. We're that connection. So, has anyone seen these things? Any thoughts or concepts of what could be done or other ways that the lesson of they won't put up with that in college has been filtering in? Yeah, Ryan says that this is a conversation she has often. They'd rather talk with the advisor than a professor. So you try to humanize the instructor. Yeah, absolutely. Emily.
Well, I think one of the things that the problematic with this is that it continues in college, not so much like that they won't put up with it, but the like idea, turn to your right or turn to your left. Some of you won't be here by the end of the semester. So it
Yeah.
continues to enable that fear. So it starts in high school by people saying they won't put up with it here, and then they get here and are told in some classrooms, not all, you
Yeah.
won't be successful here either. So then they feel like that creates some of that imposter syndrome and they don't belong. So we are potentially getting it to them in high school and college, and they feel are immediately kind of put on the defensive about what they can do.
Yeah, 100%. Especially if they were told that and then they come in here and their first couple experiences are that, they're never going to want to ask for any kind of help. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate it. Michaela.
This is more on the dismantling part, but I try to ask my
Yeah.
students when I'm giving referrals, like, are you scared? Does that feel uncomfortable? Is it something that you don't really want to do? So that number one, they want to feel seen. So they're able to then label that emotion, right? Maybe they're not scared. Maybe they're angry at their professor and that's why they don't want to go to office hours. And so letting them express what they're feeling and why they haven't taken the action or why they're feeling averse to asking for help, and kind of dismantling it that way is
Mhm.
something that I really try to work on with my students is giving them the opportunity to label it so that we can work around it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because putting it to words helps you understand it a little bit better. And then you guys can work together as a partnership to kind of figure out solutions. Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. Zach, I think this taught students to avoid responsibilities. Absolutely. That's another unintended lesson from this. They stop showing up, they stop submitting. They feel like, oh, there's no way to fix it, so I'm just going to not. And then they let themselves fail harder. See, Carol, you have a high schooler at home. Yeah. And it's hard.
Yeah.
It's avoidant personalities. Go ahead.
Yes.
Oh, for me, yes. Oh my God, he drives me nuts. He's my grandson, very smart, but decides he
Mhm.
doesn't want to do his homework because he's bored. And I
Yeah.
said, honey, there are things you'll need to do regardless. Because when you get to college, no one is going to force you to do your homework. They don't have time to track you. They have 3 or 4 classes. They don't have time to follow students who aren't doing their homework. They've got to check papers, deliver um, uh, lessons. They have so much on their plate. So give them a break. Get your homework done, boy.
Yeah, absolutely. There's fear of making mistakes because of like the unknown. And at one point, some people feel like, oh, the unknown is just a starting point of learning, but that's not the case anymore, you know? And this actually kind of like slides into like next points as well. Some of them kind of intermingle, but yeah, thank you so much for sharing. But yeah, our students, they have imposter syndrome. They're afraid of asking for help because they've been made afraid. They've been shocked into it. Um, yeah. So one of the things I think, Royanne, you just put it, teaching students to be their own point person and seeing the instructors as resources is really helpful on trying to fix some of these things. And if a class or professor isn't like this and isn't supportive of them, it can feel like whiplash to students for sure, especially like when they're first getting in. Um, thank you so much. It kind of goes into my next lesson, which is policies with good intentions that build bad habits that happen in K-12 schools. Like I said, I've been in 4 different middle and high school. I taught grades 6 through 12 mostly. Middle school's a trip. If you ever want some really interesting stories, let me tell you about teaching 7th and 8th grade English for a hot minute. But a lot of schools have various policies that are meant to support students because they understand they're coming in with like maybe their home life isn't so great. Maybe they don't have the home supports for homework. Maybe some students, I taught in a charter school in Detroit where most of my students were immigrants from Yemen. And so many of them, just culturally, the students, like the girls had to go home and take care of family, where the boys had to go work with like the family members in whatever, like some of them owned businesses, some just had to support the family. So how could I, as an educator, expect them to do homework at home when they also had all of these other pieces and elements? So many schools look at these things and they create policies like there are no zeros. Minimum you can get is 50%. So students are like, oh, I don't have to turn in anything and I get a 50%. Sweet, bet, let's roll. Students are also, you know, some schools have policies where you can submit work whenever. The last high school I was at, students could submit any work up until the end of the card marking, like any formative assignments, anytime. Summatives, they can submit them. They could be reduced in their credit, but they only got like a 2-shot like chance with it. But doing that makes a student grade focused and not skill focused. And that's where like, oh, I need an A. I need it to be perfect. I need to do X, Y, and Z. My students didn't care about the feedback or how they can become a better writer. They only cared about the A. And so that turned into some really interesting lessons, teaching them that deadlines and time management doesn't matter, that they can do it whenever they feel like it, as opposed to following deadlines. There's that disconnect between actions and consequences because they don't understand why they can't get X, Y, and Z. They don't understand why they're getting bad grades and having points taken off in these classes when they were in high school, it didn't matter. And like I said, the feedback didn't matter. I had taught AP literature for a couple of years, and they came from a teacher that, you know, not trying to dog on him, but I was really focused on the process and getting them to pull out like these juicy ideas in their writing. And they came from a guy that taught them how to do timed writing, which is great, but they were giving me empty information. And so having to shift that mind frame broke some brains in moments. But I asked them, like, when they were like, oh, I got A's in that class, I'm getting C's in this class. I said, but that's an empty A. An A without a lesson means nothing. So, what any observations, things you're noticing, making connections to this, like feel free. Thank you guys again so much for sharing. Ryan says, I worked for a high school program where we were not allowed to give homework. And that's, I know, a big debate because, some schools are like, yeah, when you're in the workforce, you don't take your work home. You check out, you check in, you do your work here, which has value. But at the same time, our students now don't know how to work outside of that space. So they don't know how to read, they don't know how to study, they don't know how to absorb. So, Helen, thank you for sharing. Hop in.
I just wrote in the chat that they are shocked when the college professor won't accept their assignment late. And with what you're sharing about they can submit work whenever, now it makes more sense,
Yeah. And as an English teacher, this destroyed my soul when I had to take an essay at the end of the card marking, but I'm like, I can't give you any feedback. I'm not going to give you feedback. It's like 3 lessons, 3 units out. What's the point, And like, I totally get it. This is where students now also, because of this, they don't ask instructors if they can have extra time or let them know what they need. They just assume because it's been happening. Yeah, thank you. Michaela.
I was gonna say, I feel like when it comes to this, I find myself a lot of times being like, as a human, I completely understand why that makes sense to you, and I have empathy for that, and then kind of repeating, right? Like, this is the standard that you're gonna be held to, and this is why we have to match that standard and reach those goals. But yeah, right, as a advisor, if I'm listening to my student, a lot of time their train of thought does make sense to me. It's just that their train of thought was misguided.
Yeah, absolutely. Or they're like not communicating that to the instructor, but like I'm like, I'm not in charge of your grade. I'm so glad you told me this. And now how can we send that same message to your instructor and be proactive instead of reactive?
Yeah, and that's another one where I'll say, like, it hurts me to hear this because I want to fix it for you, and unfortunately, I can't.
Yeah, 100%. Cool. Thank you so much. Yeah, and Lexi, it drove me nuts being into those districts where it's like you're teaching them the work doesn't matter. You don't have to put in the work. You can do bare minimum and be fine. And they're getting here and they're putting in bare minimum and it's not fine. So, and I know it's sometimes chalked up to a maturity thing, but also there's a learning curve. So, any other thoughts, questions, connections with this one? Emily.
Well, as I'm thinking about some of this conversation right now, I'm wondering if, obviously I'm thinking that Zach's in the room of the CTIs, and I'm wondering if like this needs to be a part of the onboarding conversation about talking about those high school things that don't translate. Because we start talking about college and the things in college, but I wonder if we need to name some of these things that may have occurred in high school that those of us who aren't regularly in the K through 12 system might not be as familiar with or don't have kids there.
Yeah.
And saying, this may be what you're like,
What you're used to.
Yeah, part of FYS training, but like even like those CTI, like I forget the weeks that they have, like the fall readiness and the like, I wonder if there's any kind of conversation around that might be helpful, so that they're not just hearing it later.
True.
Like,
yeah.
Ready Week. Thank you, Ready Week. That's what I couldn't think of. Sorry, Zach.
Yeah. And Zach, I'm going to put in a shameless plug. If you want me to do this during Writing Week, I will.
And
Yeah,
FYS instructor training.
Yeah, genuinely. Like a lot of this, I mean, there are some really great things. And I think Ryan put in teach the version of SQ4R to advisees struggling in lit classes. There are so many critical reading strategies that are actually helpful from K-12 schools that they just let go of, which is wild. Like a random half of that. But yes, there's chaos. All right. I'm going to move on to the next one. This one was slightly the bane of my existence. K-12 schools are now turning into a business. And so administration tends to cave frequently with things that they shouldn't have. We see it all the time if you've watched any like teacher TikToks or like anything on social media when they're like, We send a kid out with an issue and they come back with like a snack and no consequences or discipline. Yeah. And we understand that there has to be a gentle balance between a parent advocating for their and protecting their students and just letting them experience a natural consequence and be able to get through it. You know, many districts have adopted that parent is always right mind frame, which is really detrimental to everyone involved. So it it pushes this whole idea that parents can push or steamroll to get their way. So the students have learned that they don't have to self-advocate or seek supports because their parent will do it for them. And so when their parent is nowhere around, then they falter. I had a student in high school that the second he turned 18, his parents were like, "We're done. All the supports you had, got to figure it out." And then he's like, "I don't know how to do any of this. They didn't teach me anything because they steamrolled and then dropped me in the middle of the ocean." So it's a lot of it is they don't know how to self-advocate, seek supports. And then you get the other end of it where students don't accept no in a healthy way. They crash out, they make it everyone's problem, they escalate beyond following the steps of protocol. And that's where we get a million other people. And I'm thinking of you, Maya, with this, a million of students that jump immediately around. They don't pass go. They just let's go by the boardwalk, you know? So they, in these moments, they don't accept the no, they don't accept consequences, that everything is up to negotiation, which again, sometimes is the case, but sometimes you just got to accept it. So how do we support those students? How do we get them there? Thoughts or connections? Beauty.
Yeah, I'm so glad you mentioned this, Jess, because I just remember this actually happened kind of recently with one of my students. He had an incident with a professor in a department outside of his major, and he felt that the professor was, being unfair and perhaps a little discriminatory towards him.
Mhm.
And he, of course, he sent reports off, made the complaints with the dean of students, with the care departments, all these other departments on Wayne State's campus. And he had asked me, okay, well, since you're my advisor, can you email so-and-so? I forgot who it was exactly. Can you email so-and-so and copy me on it and tell them what happened to me and all this? And I said, I'm sorry, but no, please, you're gonna, since this happened to you, and I said, since this happened to I highly recommend you send the email. You can copy me because it's going to come it's going to be more impactful coming directly from you versus me. Because again, I'm only hearing the student side of the story. So, and again, we're also, with other colleagues and stuff, I try to, not that I didn't believe my student, but again, out of respect for my colleague too, I didn't want to, seem like I was taking a full side and things like that. But sure enough, the student did it. And we had a meeting with Dean Strauss, again, to talk about it and the situation. But see, this is where, when you said that about the students don't know how to self-advocate, that's something we need to really teach them, especially when they're like in their second or third year of college in. And it's like, you're not going to always have somebody holding your hand through the rest of your life. If something happens to you, you need to learn to start to help yourself, basically. But yeah. So
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for sharing that.
you're
And
welcome.
one of the things you said kind of made me think about this too, is that they then, in these moments, they've either had a parent advocate for them or maybe even a counselor advocate for them. And so when they don't know how to do it, they jump to us and then they are kind of almost expectant that we do the thing for them, but they're adults and it's going to be more effective coming from them. Plus, the game of telephone is a real thing. And so what if we don't say it correctly? So it's like, no, I don't want to take that on. Yeah, thank you everyone for sharing. These are like amazing pieces. I'm like reading everything in the chat and I want to like, if you have time, like skim through them. The comments, connections are so good. Kate.
Oh, yeah, just to follow up on what I said regarding parent orientation. So, I mean, again, this is a group that's choosing to come to their kids' parent orientation. So it's not every single one, but I do talk about, how to support their student. And, I emphasize that they know their student best and they know what they need more from the getting them over the hump of exams or figuring out how to be a college student and like, when they're stressed out and they need support, but also that they need to be more of a coaching role and not as the person that is on the other end of the phone. They need to coach their student on talking to professors, on talking to staff, on getting their problem solved. And I tie that in with, your advisor might be the person that can refer you, or they're not always going to be able to solve your issue, but they can most likely will not tell you where you need to start to get that issue resolved. But they really need to be the one to do that. First of all, most of the time we can't give information to anybody but the student. And even if I tell this to my staff, even if a student has a FERPA release, they can absolutely insist that the student, be part of that conversation. But anyway, I emphasize that it's really the student that has to be the one solving these issues with this parent as the coach behind them. And, so yeah.
Yeah, 100% agree. And I started doing this with my own son. My son is 6, he's in kindergarten. So I know I'm not taking it to this extreme, but like when he has issues with classmates, my first thing is, did you talk to them? Did you tell them you didn't like that? Did you say it was an issue? Okay, and how did they respond? Okay, good. Then did you talk to the teacher if they didn't respond the way that felt right or comfortable to you? Like coaching is the big thing. So yeah, thank you. And I see Lexi, I also see students that kind of jump rank and go straight to the dean instead of discussing thing with the professor or advisor. It's wild. Like they feel like they can go right to the manager. It's like conversations can create understanding, can help de-escalate situations and help everyone connect, It's amazing that students can't find any It's amazing that students can't find any information except for the dean president contact information. That is the most real thing. I'm gonna get that on a shirt. I'm gonna get that on a shirt. It's the advisor
You would
shirt.
sell out, Jess. We would all be buying it.
That takes us to our next lesson. Speaking of teachers and conflicts and issues, as an educator, one of the things that many school policies I'm going to call it an inflicting, is a fast teacher response turnaround time. They have to have constant and quick required responses. In most of the schools I've taught in, I had a 24 to 48 hour turnaround time when it came to responding to students and parent concerns, which is wild, I know. And not to mention that every school, oh, let's communicate with you. You're going to get an email, a text, you're going to be on Moodle, you're going to be on Parent Square, you're going to be on, what's the one that my kids use, Class Dojo. There's 1.5 million apps that make students have instantaneous access to their educators. And so because of that, students expected quick turnaround times when they get here. There's a lack of patience and boundaries. I had students asking me questions at 11 o'clock at night through this text messaging system that my school required that I used. I'm sleeping. Maybe. I may be sleeping at that time. I'm not going to respond. So I had to create firm deadline or boundaries. Like, please know that I'm not going to respond to you outside of my contract hours. If I do, it's a miracle, So they see those things happening in high school and understand why it's not occurring. They just don't get why it doesn't happen here. Why don't I get instantaneous, responses where I'm not aware of any required response time the university has. But that instant access to everybody all of the time is very unrealistic, and it diminishes somebody's ability to be patient. And it makes them feel like everyone has to work around their timeline, their needs. it's equally frustrating because they don't have that same interaction. So we'll email and get radio silence for weeks. So questions, thoughts, connections. Brian, I'm seeing your message too. English proficiency exam, yep. Writing across the curriculum was massive, and critical thinking. Yeah, Stephanie, students also don't understand that we have hundreds of other students that we support. They only see themselves. It creates that tunnel vision. What do you mean you're not just sitting in your office? I just fuse into the walls when I'm not here, and as soon as a student comes by, I just, magically appear. Whimsy. I know. And the messaging on apps, it's wild. They will respond. And email just freaks them out. I feel like it feels too official and like older, I guess. I don't know. All right. Other thoughts, questions, connections? Yeah, we set time boundaries and emails, but students will shift to Teams. Yeah. I have actually a lot of my students didn't realize that they can connect with me on Teams, and that was a thing. I'm kind of actually grateful for that a little bit. But all right, so I want to honor everyone's time, and you guys have had really great conversations. So I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that I've been doing to try and combat these pieces. And I would love any additional solutions that you have. I know we've already kind of had some ones. Michaela, really great conversation pieces too, of like getting students to, like feel heard and seen, and then like identifying issues. But there are like three big things that I do. I focus on demystifying college in itself. And I think several people have mentioned that too, is that college doesn't have to be this scary, untouchable, unapproachable thing, because education is something that works for you. It's part of a system that you can, it's your education. Do you take control of it? So I typically have a pretty open door, but with boundaries. If I'm either mentally not able to like have people walking in, or I'm just having an extra busy day, I'll put that on my door so that they understand. And they're pretty good about reading it and not coming in. Most of the time, because it's theater and dance, they just want to come in and tell me everything in their life and just hang out. But I make a very welcoming space. So then that allows me to facilitate conversations between students and faculty. When they're like, oh, they're so scary, they're so intense. I'm like, have you actually talked to them? Have you had a conversation? Did you email them? And I'm in a space where I'm not too far from many of the faculty members. So when they walk by my office, I'm just like, hey, have you met so-and-so? And we make these chill interactions, and then they start seeing, oh, my instructors are actually humans. While this can have a double-edged sword situation, asking the worst you can get is a no is a policy I kind of frequently tell students. So like, if they need extra time, if they need extra help, if they need another opportunity, ask for it. If you don't ask, it's an automatic no. But, reminding them that there's a boundary and you do have to accept no sometimes. You just have to know how to pivot. A lot of it, I tell them too, as a first gen college student, you don't know what you don't know. It's okay to not know the questions, but if you talk it out loud with me, maybe we can identify your issues or concerns or whatever it is that you're needing. And then we can lead you to those resources. And reminding them that this is all a partnership, but they are the head of it. So it's all up to them. But know that we have people backing you. And the frequent conversation that I've had to help students with is shifting their mind frame of understanding that perfect doesn't exist, or redefining what perfect is for you. Maybe perfect is actually submitting the work because you weren't doing that before. So, hey, perfect, we did it. Maybe perfect learner is a person that's okay with getting messy and trying to figure it out a little bit more. The other thing we talk about is communication and empowerment. So we are talking about creating email templates because some of the students are like, they don't want to ask because they don't know how. They're afraid that they're going to ask in such a way that the teacher is going to think that they're ridiculous or they don't want to come across disrespectful. So I'm like, well, here's an email template. Dear so-and-so, hi, I'm the student in your class. I'm having some concerns about give specifics. Is there some time that we can meet for help? Thank you so much for your time. And then they utilize those templates. I remind students that, hey, if you don't get a response right away, if you give it like within a week, if you don't hear anything, it's okay to be a gentle nudge follow-up kind of person. Be like, hey, I wasn't sure if you saw this or if it went through. I also create a lot of student-facing documents that help with them understanding the curriculum. The theater and dance degree works is a hot mess and a half. And so giving them clear 4-year plans with like spreadsheets that they can stare at that helps them guide is massive to make them feel more empowered. And then that gradual release model, which I learned from teaching. I do it to show you. We do it together so we get a handle, and then you do it on your own. And then, of course, regular check-ins. And then making supportive spaces. Anyone that's talked to me probably can agree that I have the face that people want to talk to. Ding. But I create a supportive space. So my office in itself, I know you can't see it, but I have these screens on my lights. They're meant to be ADHD friendly for students that fluorescence like kind of twitch out their brains like myself. So it keeps it nice and calm. They just magnet to the ceiling. There's fidgets and snacks and other resources. So I get them comfortable with me, get trusting with me. And then I can be like, hey, it's a really good trusted resource. The Academic Success Center. Have you been there? They have really great writing resources if you're struggling with your writing. Oh, you don't know how to study the material? Have you tried one of these really great workshops that they have to teach you how to figure out your brain? But we create it as a judgment-free zone. I'm here to listen and guide, but I lay it out for you to play it out. Oh yeah, the ADHD lights, I don't know if you can see it. They're fantastic. And then, just being a human, reminding them that I went through hot messery here. I have no problem telling them of my college experience and letting them know like you'll survive and you can thrive, but lean on the resources. So yeah, kind of just went through any other solutions or things that you're doing, stuff that you want to like, hey, this really works for me, for my students, things you can share with your colleagues. Yes, Stephanie. Yes. Yeah, sometimes I have a student contact me months after not getting an email and say, please bug me if you don't get a response. Yeah, stickers and pens that give out. Yep, I have a bin of stickers right now. They're choose happiness, some pride stickers, because yes. And then ones that are textured for anxiety humans. Yeah. So
Oh, sorry.
no, go ahead.
Okay. So I don't know if anyone can answer this. I'm just a little baffled. And I get there can be several reasons, but every time I don't understand. I have students who come and they'll meet with me in my office and everything. And directly right in front of them, I have delicious chocolate. I'm not talking about the Hershey's chocolate yucky stuff. No, I'm talking delicious Belgian chocolates. How come they don't seem to want to take those?
I think they're probably afraid to take it because they don't want to. Many people want to be asked, like, would you like a chocolate?
And I sometimes ask them, and it's like they're like, "Oh no, thank you." Okay,
Wow.
well then, okay, I invite you all to come to my office and take the chocolate if you like. So,
I'm 100% coming to your office.
awesome, good, because I have a lot, and no one else is taking it.
Yeah,
Okay.
that is actually kind of wild. Even if you've offered, they're still not taking it.
Yeah, and I don't know. One student told me she's watching her calories, and I'm like, oh, you're young. You don't need to worry about that, right? I didn't say that, but I thought it in my head.
Be like, do you know how much energy you need for brain power? Take the
I
chocolate.
know.
It's brain power.
I know. I know. No, Emily, I didn't put a sign on the container. I just leave it directly right in front of them, thinking that they would know to take it, but I don't know.
Maybe just a little sign that says, please help yourself. So like,
I think I'm gonna have to do that.
I
I
mean, I think that's what I would do if people aren't taking them.
because I put them right on my desk, right sitting right next to the chair they sit in, to go over when they come meet with me. And I don't know. I don't get it, but okay.
Oh, Lexi, I'm so glad to hear that. And I mean, I was a student of the College of Education here, so I can no, I'm just trying to help out, but yeah. There are so many things that can happen, and a lot of this is like, let's talk with one another because we know education is constantly changing and we have to change with them. So looking at the whole picture, and I'm still connected with my previous colleagues. So when I hear their stories, I laugh with them, I cry with them, and then we start talking about how we can bridge the connection between the two of us. And remembering that habits can be broken and rebuilt, but it's done if we work together. So, Courtney, tell me things. What's up?
Yeah, sorry, I had two quick questions. Well, the first one isn't that
Yeah.
quick, but I still have a question. So I work in the Academic Success Center, and I'm so glad when advisors, hear about students struggling in their classes, refer them over. We do know in our department that there's a little bit of an issue with like all of the different resources available. So like you mentioned, like if a student's struggling with writing, go to the AIC. Unfortunately, we actually don't help with the writing. The writing center
Writing center event,
does
but
that.
yes.
But I do just want to let you guys know, if you do send someone to our office or like our services, we have a really good referral system. So like if someone's like, oh, I was looking for help with this, we will refer them to the writing center. Right now we don't have like astronomy support. We'll refer them to like STEM Commons, things like that. But kind of going back to one of the lessons that they learned that wasn't that great, which is how they communicate. They're so used to immediate access. They're so used to like texting a professor, texting an advisor,
Mhm.
and just getting back. Do we think that's part of the problem? Because like that's the million-dollar question we've been asking in my department, I think is like, how do we make sure students not only know of our services, use our services, because students will often say like, we didn't know. Like that we had free tutoring or we had like free SI sessions or whatever, even though like we are like papering the university. We like all of you guys again are great at sharing these resources. Is there something to like having some sort of app? Like not to encourage this lesson of like get immediate access whenever you need it, but is there something to that, I guess?
I think it might be helpful if there's some kind of campaign of texting, or I know sometimes students just need instantaneous access, but like also, and I speak for theater and dance students, they have a wild schedule. And so many of my students are in productions. And so when they're, especially in Tech Week, like right now, shameless plug, come see SpongeBob. They're in Tech Week for SpongeBob. And so they're either getting to their homework at like 5 in the morning or late at night when their rehearsal gets out at midnight.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's a hard one.
Yeah.
And I know
Well,
part of the, at least theater and dance, they don't like to leave Old Main. Is there a
yeah.
world where, like, hey, Academic Success Center is going to do a roving thing? We're going to do like a workshop in Old Main and a workshop in this building for anyone that might, I mean, would that create additional access?
We've tried that with housing and it did
Mhm.
not get a lot of
Okay.
attendance or support. We've also, it seems like mostly like if it's like an intentional like come drop by situation, it really only works as if like they're required to go for some reason. So like we work with athletics, we work with the College of Nursing, and there are like different requirements for them to attend certain services in a certain number. So we
Mhm.
always get that attendance, but if there's no requirement, it's a little bit of a struggle. But
Yeah.
when I figure it out, I'll have $1 million. So I'll let you guys know, and it'll be like a crazy production. My second question is, BB, where is your office? I really like Belgian chocolates and I will come eat some. So yeah.
Good question, Courtney. Yes, I'm on the 12th floor of the Maccabees building, room number 12002.13.
All right,
Getting
you'll
it down.
see. Thank you. Also, thank you for this whole presentation. It was great.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. All right. Well, I want to, honor everyone's time. If you ever want to chat, have questions, if you're in Old Main on the 3rd floor, you know how Old Main is like an absolute mystery. Feel free to wander up here. I'm usually here Monday through Thursday. I work remotely on Fridays. And that's my choice because my students are the way they are because I'm trying to meet them where they're at. So, yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate you guys being here.
Thank you, Jess, so much. So many accolades in the comments for you. Everyone's saying that you should take this on the road and submit it for NACADA, regional or national. And I agree, which is why I asked you to do it for us today. Thank you to everybody attending. If you have 2 minutes and you wouldn't mind filling out an evaluation form, I give all of that feedback to Jess. I dropped the link in the chat twice because I want to make sure everybody sees it. But if you could do that, that would be great. And I will send out, Jess, if you want to send me your presentation, I will send out the recording and the presentation as a follow-up.
Absolutely.
Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for coming, and have a good rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye. No pressure, Jess.